Hi, everyone, and thank you for all being here today. So, as students, many of you are preparing to enter the workforce, whether through part-time job, internship, or future careers. And no matter what industry you step into, whether it's like retail, business, healthcare, or office job, one thing remains the same is that your safety at work. And that's why today presentations from WorkSafeBC is very, very important. And let me introduce a little bit. So some of you may know WorkSafeBC ensure workplace safety across British Columbia. The goal is simple, but really critical to help prevent injuries and educate worker about it right. And please join me to welcome Robin. She is an industry and program specialist from WorkSafeBC. And after Robin presentations, we will have 15 minutes for questions and answer Q&A sections. And Robin, the floor is yours.
Great. Hi, thank you, Josie. Just making sure you can hear me, correct?
Yes, let me.
Awesome.
The team is a little bit lagging today, so I try to send live, share your webcam. So just give me 1 second, okay?
Okay.
Yes. Just give me 1 second. Uh, yeah, actually, Robin, you can start and then I will figure it out at the background
Okay,
how to, yeah.
sounds all good. Hello, everybody. I don't know how many people we have here today, but it's great to be able to present in front of you. As Josie said, my name is Robin Schooley. I'm an industry and program specialist with WorkSafeBC, and in my role, I work with a team that aims to bring knowledge, awareness, empowerment to workers who are either young, uh, new to their jobs, new to working in BC, marginalized or underserved. Today, I hope to help you understand what WorkSafe BC is and how we support all workers, including international students. And maybe after in the Q&A, I can get a better sense of who was familiar with WorkSafe BC before we did this. So I'm also going to apologize in advance because I do have a video, but we tried it during just when I logged in and we weren't able to make it work. It's a very short little video and I'll have Josie share it with you afterwards. But just to get a sense as to what we're going to go over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to talk about what WorkSafe BC is, what to do if you are injured at work. I'm assuming many of you as students will be working while you're going to school, and it's really important to know what to do if you're injured at work and that there is a system in place that protects you. We'll talk about when you are injured, how to file a claim for workers' compensation. You are entitled to that as anybody who works in BC, whether you are you're here working temporarily, going to school just for a short term, whether you're here or whether you're working on contract, part-time, full-time, or even as we even cover undocumented workers. We don't care as what your situation is. If you are working and getting some kind of benefit payment for your job, you are considered a worker. And if you are injured, you have the right to file a claim. We're going to talk about why WorkSafe BC has a special focus on young and new workers, why that's important. We'll talk about your rights as workers. And as I said, just because you're international students, it has no bearing on your right to have a safe workplace, and you have the same rights as any other workers. We're going to talk about roles and responsibilities in the workplace, bullying and harassment, what you should be expecting from training. There's a whole list of things that your employer should be covering with you. And again, doesn't matter if you're full-time, part-time, on contract, paid by the project, you still require training and orientation. And we'll wrap up with some overview of the different resources that are available to you. So just to give you a sense as to what WorkSafeBC is, you may have also heard us called the Workers' Compensation Board of British Columbia. It's the same thing, but we like to focus on safety as opposed to compensation in our name. So we are WorkSafeBC. We are the only provincial agency that's dedicated to promoting safe and healthy workplaces across BC. We are not really a government organization. We're quasi-government. We partner with workers and employers to prevent work-related injuries, disease, disability. And our services include education, prevention, compensation for when you are injured, and support for injured workers, and no-fault insurance to protect employers and workers. And I'll get into what we mean by no fault in just a minute. Essentially, our business is occupational health and safety. Occupational, just another word for workplace, health and safety. We provide insurance. So we are an insurance company, and it's employers who buy insurance from us to protect their workers. Our business also compensation. When you're injured, you are entitled to file a claim and have some of your wages covered while you're recovering, and to get access to other services. We authorize healthcare, and when you do need some sort of specialized service to recover from a workplace injury. And we do provide service to workers and employers in BC, and it's all around the idea of keeping workplaces safe and making sure employers are meeting their requirements under the law, because the Workers' Compensation Act and the Occupational Health and Safety Regulation, these are bits of legislation. These are laws that govern workplaces in BC. And next, I was going to show you a short video featuring a newcomer to Canada and their thoughts about workplace health and safety. Again, I will share that with Josie after our meeting today, and she can share that out with you. But I will say, this video that you'll see after the fact is featured on a new part of our website. Our website is WorkSafeBC.com, and this site is WorkSafeBC.com/day1. And it's dedicated to newcomers to Canada, the idea that you have a right to health and safety from day one, your first day on the job. And it's part of the work that we're doing to try to support people who are new to working in BC, and that includes international students. Our top priority in everything we do is prevention. We want to try to prevent accidents and injuries from happening. We say that virtually all workplace injuries are preventable. Maybe not all. There are things that are truly things that are unforeseen that you couldn't have prevented, but so many are preventable when workers understand what their rights are. And when employers foremost are creating workplaces that keep their workers healthy and safe. We work to prevent injuries through education and awareness building, and that's sort of what my role is at WorkSafeBC, to sort of talk to all the various people, whether it's employers, workers, associations, people in business and industry in BC, to make sure people understand what all the rights and responsibilities are around for all the different parties in a workplace. We do consultation, and we do enforcement of the Occupational Health and Safety Regulation and really the Workers' Compensation Act. We have officers, prevention officers, who actually inspect workplaces to ensure they're following health and safety regulations. If employers are found to not be meeting the guidelines and regulations, employers can deliver employers can receive written orders. This is an order from WorkSafeBC, which we have the authority to do this, to say you need to correct that unsafe condition. If they don't, or if there are repeat violations, or if it's a particularly high risk violation that has the possibility to cause serious injury or loss of life, we can actually impose fines against employers, and it costs them. In worst case scenarios, we can shut workplaces down that are unsafe. And that does happen. We either the entire workplace, or we'll say you can't operate this piece of machinery until it's brought up to appropriate standards, or so we can do a complete workplace shutdown, or our officers can shut down individual pieces of machinery. And you should know that officers are from WorkSafeBC can go into any workplace at any time. They often do go, and they go in unannounced, and they'll talk to employers and workers, and they'll ask to see training records and things like that. And they cannot be refused entry. So they have a lot of authority in workplaces. Their role is not to try and be scary, but to try and make sure that employers are doing what they should be, to provide guidance and to help them make sure that they're creating the safest and healthiest workplace possible. We want to keep you safe. The basics of the compensation system, we call it a no-fault system, and that goes way back to something we call the historic compromise. So prior to going to get a bit of a history lesson now. Prior to 1917, if you were a worker in British Columbia and you were injured while you were working, doing something at work, the only thing you could do was sue your employer. It was the only option you had. And lawsuits were rarely successful. And workers either had to work injured, or they had to stay off work while they were recovering and face financial hardship. It was not a good system for workers. It didn't protect them in any way, shape, or form. In 1917, an agreement was struck where employers agreed to fund a system, a workers' compensation system, paying premiums into this insurance pool based on how risky the work is and the size of their payroll. And in exchange for that, workers agreed that they could not sue their employers for work-related injuries. So there's no fault when an injury happens and there's a claim made. We just pay you out of that insurance pool. Employers are paying into this insurance pool, so people get the help and the recovery and all the things that they need to help recover without facing financial hardship and without having to go through a lawsuit. The only time you can sue an employer is if you are truly a volunteer and not a worker. You're not covered for workers' compensation in that situation, but in any other situation where you're being paid in any way, you have coverage. You don't have to apply for it. All workers are covered. As I said earlier, if you're working full-time, part-time, on contract, or if you're receiving some benefit from the employer, even in lieu of wages, it could be, room and board from an employer, that sort of thing. As long as you're getting some remuneration, you will be considered likely a worker, and workers are automatically covered. Employers typically have to register with us when they have workers and tell us what their payroll is so we can determine how much their premiums are. Even if you are working for somebody and they have failed to register when they should, if they are legally required to register with WorkSafeBC and they have not, that is not your concern. You as a worker are still entitled to coverage, and we'll follow up with the employer. You don't have to do that, but we'll make sure then that they are registered with us, but it will not affect your ability to file a claim if you are injured. It's not something workers ever have to worry about. We are entirely an employer-funded system. No taxes or government funds go into funding WorkSafeBC. We're paid for entirely by employer premiums that they pay as part of their insurance. As I mentioned, all employers with workers or incorporated companies are required to register with WorkSafeBC. And when they do, that's when they pay premiums. There is, and this is very important, if you are unfamiliar with workers' compensation in BC, there is absolutely no cost to the worker for workers' compensation insurance. You don't have to apply for anything. As a worker, you automatically have coverage should you be injured during the course of work. And your employer should not pass on any costs to you. You shouldn't see any deductions for workers' compensation on a check or on a direct deposit for payroll, anything. The benefits, if you are injured at work and you file a claim, we cover your medical costs. This could include doctor visits, physiotherapy, x-rays, CT scans, MRIs, if you have to have surgery or physical rehabilitation, if your workplace injury has damaged your teeth and you need dental work, also psychological treatment if you experience a mental health injury. We also cover the different aids you would need, like, crutches or braces or whatever you would need as part of your recovery from an accident that happens at work. We also provide a portion of your wages, and I'll get into what that looks like in a second. Other things are disability pensions. If you are injured and well, first of all, if you're unable to return to your regular type of work, we can provide training to train you in other types of work. But if you are disabled because of a workplace injury and are unable to continue work, these very sad situations, we will pay a disability pension up to the age 65, typically. And if sadly, individuals who die during the course of their work, it's very sad, but it does happen. There are monthly pension benefits for spouses based on workers' earnings. If you are injured, and I mentioned wage loss and that we pay you while you are recovering, if you have to miss time because of work, and what happens is we start paying you once your claim has been accepted, as opposed to your employer. And the amount you get is 90% of your net income, and it's tax-free. So for example, if your gross income in a year is $48,000, and after your typical deductions, your net income is, let's say, $36,700, as per this example, you would get your wage loss coverage would be 90% of that amount, which would be $33,030. That's not to say you get all of that at once. If you're off work and recovering for 2 weeks, you'll get 2 weeks worth of that annual net income. Hopefully that makes sense. But we just want to make sure that you're not suffering financial hardship because of a workplace injury. Your benefits will be payable from the day following the day of injury. So if you were injured today, your benefits would be payable as of tomorrow. It may take us a week or so to approve the claim and get that all in place, but we will pay you from the day after the day of injury. So what to do if you are injured on the job? You always must do something. Your first thing you do is report it to your employer immediately. And it could be a minor injury. Maybe you only require maybe some first aid on the job site at the workplace, and that's fine. It's still important that you report it, and that that's on record, because even if you don't have to miss work or don't have to go to your doctor, the fact that you've told your employer about it is a good thing, even if it's all you needed was a Band-Aid or something like that. But if you do need to see a doctor, please seek medical attention. Make sure that you tell your doctor that your injury happened at work. That prompts your doctor to send us a particular form. We need to get information from you, from your employer, and from your doctor when we're approving a claim, to make sure that we have all the pieces we need to give the adequate approval and make sure you're, if you have to miss time, that you're getting the appropriate compensation. If you go see your doctor, as I said, tell them your injury is work-related. If you have to travel to your doctor's office or to a hospital, it's up to your employer to pay your transportation costs. They can't tell you to hop on a bus or grab a cab. They could put you in a cab, but they have to pay for it, or they have to pay whatever the cost is for you to get your medical attention. Start a claim as soon as you can by reporting it to us. We have a teleclaim number, which is like if you've ever had an accident in a car in BC, you call ICBC and you start a claim. It's very similar to that. You call the number in red there, and that starts, gets the process going. Obviously, if you are injured and you are unable to make that phone call, please don't worry about it. We'll get information from your employer and from the doctor who sees you. But if you do miss time as a result of your injury, work time, and you're able, please call that phone number. A little bit more about claims. You typically have 1 year to file a claim. Typically, I say typically because there are exceptions. We will make exceptions, but we'll need to know the reasons for the delay. If you were unaware of WorkSafeBC, you didn't know you had a right to do this, we may allow for a claim beyond 1 year. Or if an employer tells you, no, you don't need to file a claim, we'll take care of you, or you can't claim for this, that could be considered claim suppression. I'll talk to that in a minute. But if you have been suppressed or talked into not filing a claim, even when you really think you probably should have, we might allow a claim beyond a year. Of course, claims are only allowed when the injury is actually related to something that happened at work. The closer you can file a claim in time to the time the injury happened, the more easy it will be to prove, or for us to see and to understand that the injury actually was work-related. The claim starts once we get all the necessary documentation and we approve it. If you're going to miss time from work and file a claim and you want your wages covered, which they will be when you file a claim and you miss time, we do need that medical evidence to support a claim. So it's really important that you do see a doctor if you're going to miss time from work, and let them know that it was a work-related injury. I will stress that it is not up to your employer to decide whether or not you should file a claim. It's not up to your coworkers. It's not up to your union if you have one. It's not up to anybody to tell you whether or not you should file a claim. If you're unsure, you can file it. We, WorkSafeBC, we are the only people who can decide whether a claim will be accepted or not. So if you're ever feeling like there's pressure on you from anybody to not file a claim, just file the claim if you are injured at work, and we will make the decision as to whether that claim is accepted. And our decision to accept or deny a claim is guided by some documentation that we have, the Workers' Compensation Act and the Rehabilitation Services and Claims Manual. That sets out our decision-making power, I suppose, our authority. But please do not feel pressure from anybody to not file a claim. If you do get injured and file a claim, there's kind of two different types of injuries that we actually, three really, if you think about it. There's a specific incident, what we call a specific incident injury. This is the obvious thing that happens and immediately you're injured, whether you hit yourself with a hammer, or something falls on you from a stock shelf, or you fall off a ladder, that sort of thing, and you're injured. It's something that a specific incident that occurred that caused that accident and that injury to happen. There's also the gradual onset injury. And this is the kind that happens gradually over time, like something you maybe frequently do. You're working on a conveyor belt and you're constantly moving your arm and your shoulder. And over time, you get aches and pains and injuries to your shoulder. You can't say exactly when the injury happened, but it's sort of gotten worse over time. And it's getting to the point now where it's really affecting your life and your ability to work. So we will accept those types of claims too, and we'll look at the kind of work you were doing and how you're doing it and see whether it's likely, whether that type of work would lead to the kind of injury you're experiencing. We also have a department that deals specifically with psychological injuries and mental health claims. So they're as valid as physical claims, and they will be considered as well. When you are filing a claim, be very specific when you're talking to somebody here about what you were doing when you got injured, what equipment you were using, kind of your body posture, how long you were doing the work. For us to make a decision, the person should have a visual picture of what happened while you were injured. Again, the gradual onset is a little harder because it's hard to say exactly when it started. But again, we'll look at the type of work you do and make some decisions about that. If your claim is denied, if we say no, that we don't accept your claim, it does happen. You have a right to various levels of appeal, and there are different timelines associated with the different levels of appeal. But no, sometimes, yes, sometimes we make the wrong decision, but sometimes we've made a decision because we didn't have all the information and to support the claim. And with more information, something that maybe could happen in an appeal process, we would learn more, understand more, and change our decision. So there's a number of things like that that could lead to a change in the decision. And there are 3 levels of appeal. The last one is not appealable. So they might overturn our original decision and allow the claim, or they might uphold our decision. Know that the majority of physical injury claims are approved. Mental health claims are a little more challenging because you need a diagnosis, but we are approving those claims at a very high level as well. So there's something, sorry, nope, I didn't. I thought I missed a screen. When you're thinking about filing a claim, please remember that it is illegal for an employer to penalize you for raising a health and safety issue at work. They cannot do that. It is against the law. If you have a concern, please raise it. And if you receive a negative action, if you are reprimanded, or your hours are cut, or you're reassigned, you can submit a prohibited action complaint. And there's the information on the screen for who to call or send an email. It is against the law for an employer to penalize you for raising a concern. Similarly, it is against the law for them to prevent you from filing a claim or tell you you are not eligible. As I said earlier, we are the only people who can make a decision on a WorkSafeBC claim. If your employer attempts to prevent you from filing a claim, call this number and you will be referred to our claims suppression team. That's the phone number and we will deal with it. So yes, don't ever let somebody tell you that you cannot file a claim. And I also want to point out that if you are raising a health and safety concern, not necessarily filing a claim, but you have if you have a complaint or a major concern, either for yourself or somebody else at work, you can call that prevention information line number, and you don't even have to leave your name. Nobody even has to know it was you that called. Sometimes new workers are afraid to complain because they're afraid it's going to get back to them and make them look bad. You can call anonymously. You don't have to leave your name, and we'll send an officer out to the workplace and talk to your employer and look at the work and see whether it is unsafe or if there's something unsafe that's happening. Why we focus on young and new workers. Young workers, that's an easy one. It's anybody under the age of 25. A new worker can be a person at any age. If they're new to the workforce, returning to, say maybe they've been away and the hazards have changed and there are new things they're facing, maybe relocated to a new workplace where the hazards are different. For an example, maybe you're working, let's say for a construction company, and you're here one day and you're on this site on another. This was a residential construction environment. This is a high-rise construction environment. Different hazards, different things you need to know about. So that's why we have sort of a focus on young and new workers, because with very specific rules for training and orientation. Workers who have been on the job for less than a month of any age, they have much higher rates of injury than more experienced workers. And that's just because you're doing things you've never done before with equipment you've never worked on before, and you're inexperienced. And so the likelihood of getting injured is higher. Our studies show that recent immigrants are also more likely than Canadian-born workers to be in physically demanding occupations, entry-level work, and sometimes that means the kind of work that you're doing when you are a student. They may be more manual, more physical, and there's greater opportunity for injury. And we also know young and new workers may be reluctant to speak up and say something, even when they should. And again, I encourage you to speak up if there is something unsafe. You're doing yourself a favor, you're doing your coworkers a favor, and ultimately you're doing your employer a favor too, because when they have claims, it raises their insurance premiums. So if you can prevent those accidents from happening, then their premiums don't rise. So it benefits everybody. Your rights as workers. This is probably one of the most important pieces I want to talk about today. You have, and this is not just students, this is not just young people or new workers, this is every worker in British Columbia has this right, the right to know. And by that we mean, know what the hazards are in your job. What are the things that you're going to be facing that could cause you injury? How they can affect you, and how your employer is controlling those hazards. What are they doing to try and prevent those hazards from injuring you? Your second right is the right to participate. And you might think, well, how do I participate? What do you mean by that? There's so many ways you can participate in health and safety at work. It can be as simple as asking questions, raising health and safety concerns, and reporting unsafe conditions and practices. And you cannot lose your job or get into trouble for raising safety concerns and reporting unsafe conditions, either to your employer or to us. Other things you can do. If you are part of a workplace that has a health and safety committee, or even just a worker representative for safety, you can become a member of that committee. That is an option that's open to you. So participating, just being involved, and is one of your rights as a worker, any worker in BC. The third one is probably the most important right that you have. Sorry, is the right to refuse unsafe work. And this is so important, that if you believe that a job that you're doing or could put you or someone else at risk of injury, actually the legislation or laws say you must not perform that job or task. Not that even that you just shouldn't, but that you mustn't. And you have the right to refuse unsafe work, and you cannot be discriminated or in any way fired, hours cut, anything like that because of that. So that is one of your rights at work, to refuse unsafe work. There is a process. I'm going to give you the steps on how to refuse unsafe work. This is perfect world scenarios. So we'll go through in the best way, this is how it's done, is that you start, you report the unsafe condition to your supervisor employer. You say, hey, this machine isn't working properly, or this is not functioning properly, or this person is doing this and it's really dangerous. You tell your employer. Explain your concerns as clearly as possible. And the employer or supervisor you talk to must investigate and fix the problem if possible. And the supervisor, if they say the work is safe and you're wrong, they must report back to you. But if you still view the work as unsafe, notify us. You can call us and anonymously, as I mentioned, if you prefer. This is our prevention information line number again. Make sure that if you are refusing unsafe work, that this is the process. Perfect world scenario. We don't live in a perfect world, so sometimes maybe you don't have the kind of relationship with your supervisor or employer where you feel comfortable doing this. That's okay. Your first call can always be to us. Or maybe you've tried raising the concern before and they've done nothing about it. Or maybe you've gone with a group to your employer and just because you all have the same concerns and they still don't fix the problem. You can make your first call to us and we will address it. Typically what happens is an officer will come out to the workplace and talk to your employer, look at the process or look at the procedure, look at the equipment, and determine whether or not it's unsafe. Even if it's found that it is safe and you were wrong, it's not unsafe, you still cannot be disciplined or discriminated against in any way if you believed that it was unsafe. Roles and responsibilities at work. Your role as a worker, obviously, to follow safe work procedures, encourage your co-workers to do the same. If you're given specific safety gear to wear it. If you see any unsafe conditions and you are able to correct them, simple things like a spill on a restaurant floor, that sort of thing, or a bigger unsafe condition, report it right away to your manager or your supervisor and ask how to do it safely. Just because you've been trained once on something doesn't mean you might get it and understand it for the rest of your life. Don't assume you can do something you've never done before or that you must remember the steps all the time once you've trained once. If you don't understand, ask for more training. You have the right by law to ask for more training. Ask your supervisor to show you how to do it safely. Your supervisor's role is to instruct you and your coworkers in safe work procedures. Make sure they have training for all your assigned tasks, correct any unsafe acts or conditions that are brought to them, and enforce health and safety requirements. And that includes developing health and safety rules and inspecting the workplace for hazards. That's your supervisor. The employer, the company, has to make sure you can do your job without unnecessary risk, that they are knowing and complying with our regulations, that they involve supervisors and experienced workers in identifying health and safety problems, developing prevention programs to eliminate those hazards, to ensure supervisors are trained and can safely train you in safe work procedures, and to provide required safety gear and protective clothing. Some of the stuff is required that workers have to supply themselves, and that's stuff to protect them against natural elements, things like work gloves, safety footwear, safety headgear. But if you're requiring any other specific personal protection equipment, safety gear, your employer is required to provide that. Bullying and harassment. I just want to touch on this because this is something you should never face in the workplace. You know, we consider it any kind of inappropriate conduct by a person towards a worker, towards you, when that person should have known that it would cause you to feel humiliated or intimidated. It's not just reasonable action taken by a manager to direct the work, but it is something that makes you feel like your character is under attack, that you're being discriminated against or humiliated. and you don't have to put up with that at work. Your employer is required to have a policy statement around bullying and harassment, to take steps to prevent this, develop procedures for reporting incidents, and you are not. So this is supposed to happen. As a worker, your duties are obviously to not engage in bullying and harassment, to report it if you see it, and then comply with your procedures. We have more on our website, WorkSafeBC.com bullying. And your employer, there has to be, their policy is expected to have something that if the employer themselves is the bully, a process for dealing with that. An officer will come when they do an inspection and often ask to learn more about the employer's bullying and harassment policy. You can file a claim if you're experiencing bullying and harassment. What to expect from training? There are a number of different things that should be covered during training and orientation. Again, after I finish my presentation today, I will make sure Josie has a link to this document. There's a document called Support for Employers, Training and Orientation for Young and New Workers, and it includes the sample worker orientation checklist, which includes 14, I believe, topics that should be covered during training and orientation. This is just a sample of them: your rights and responsibilities, your supervisor's contact information, how to perform your job safely, hazards on the job, how to get first aid, PPE, that sort of thing. I'm going to move into resources. I realize I just have a few minutes left. I may take another 3 to 5 minutes here. We have a whole page on our website for newcomers. I mentioned it's our site called Day One. And we have a number of resources here. If you have questions about WorkSafeBC services, call our prevention information line. We can put you in touch with someone who speaks your language. We have a language line that we can put you in touch with somebody who speaks your language. There's a lot of resources here. This Staying Safe at Work resource is a downloadable resource. It's available in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, Korean, and French. And I encourage you to check this out. We also have something called the Workers Advisor's Office, which is independent from WorkSafeBC, and they can give you free advice and representation, education for around workers' compensation. There are provinces all across BC, and we encourage you to reach out to the Workers Advisor's Office if you have, if you're not understanding, if maybe you need additional help understanding your claim, or what your rights are. We have a similar office for employers, the Employers Advisor's Office, and again, this is independent advice and assistance for employers. We have locations across BC. We have 15 offices. So we have claims and officers, claims people and officers at each of our offices. Again, I mentioned our prevention line. That's the number to call if you have any health and safety concerns or if you need to report something unsafe. This is the teleclaim line for workers, the number you call if you are injured at work and are able to make that call. Additional contacts, we have, obviously, this is outside of WorkSafeBC, but if you need ambulance, fire, police, you call 911, not us. Our claims, I mentioned that that's the number you call for claims. If your concern is about hours of work, breaks, or pay, that's not WorkSafeBC. We're just about safety, but you can call the Employment Standards Branch if it's about overtime or hours of work or when you get your breaks, that sort of thing. If it's a non-emergency criminal act, contact your local police. The last resource I want to share with you is the Canadian Human Trafficking Hotline. This is operated by the Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking. This is not a WorkSafeBC thing, but it is something we do like to promote. Human trafficking is the exploitation of human beings for gain by others. It can affect workers if they're being exploited by force, coercion, deception, abuse of trust, power, or authority. This is a service that is available to you 24/7, and it connects you with social services, law enforcement, and emergency services. Not WorkSafeBC, but it's a resource that I want you to know about, and that we're happy to share on behalf of the Canadian Human Trafficking the Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking. And with that, and with 15 minutes left of my presentation, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open everything up for discussion now. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'm happy to share those. I'm happy to answer. Now, Josie, do I recall that you were going to ask me the questions?
Thank you so much for such a really informative presentations. You cover all the topic like injury at work, worker right, how to make a claims. And I believe due to the presentation is really comprehensive and informative. Right now, I didn't see any question from the students, but I'm sure this is more like prepare for them to let them know all the informations and resources, and in case when they enter the workforce later, if anything happened, I'm sure my student gonna reach out to WorkSafeBC. And I get that's it for today. And thank you so much for being here. Yeah,
you're so welcome. I
and
just wanted to say if students too have any questions after today, maybe they're not comfortable bringing it up in this
yeah,
environment, they're welcome to email me. It's Robin, ROBIN .Schooley, SCHOOLEY at WorkSafeBC.com. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, or if I don't know the answer, I will find the answer for you. So I'm happy to do that if you're not comfortable raising questions here.
Thank you so much, Robin. For sure, I will include your email when I send the email to students. So if they have any question, they can reach out to you directly. And before I close the sections, do you have any takeaway note for students today?
I guess, like I said, I will follow up with a couple links for you to share. But I think the most important things to remember is you're an international student. You have the same rights as any worker in BC. Doesn't matter how much or how little you are working, or even if you're working beyond the number of hours that you thought you would be working, or are permitted to work as a student. If you're working beyond those hours, we don't discriminate against that. If you are working and you are injured, you have the right to file a claim. The other biggest giveaway, always feel you have a right to file that claim. It is our decision to make, not your employer's. And make sure if you feel unsafe, trust your instincts, trust your judgment, and you have a right to refuse unsafe work. If there's one thing you remember beyond all else, is that you always have that right. Every worker has that right to refuse to do something that they think could injure them or somebody else. So with that, thank you also very much for listening today, and please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, thank you so much, Raveen. So I will close the live today, and student, please, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us or Robin. Okay.
Yes.
And
okay.
Thank you, and yeah, bye everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye bye.